Welcome to Living on the Wire, our league's inside look at how teams are managing their waiver wire budgets. And it's a big one today. There was, last I looked, 15 waiver wire budget transfers. Those are the ones that we're going to look at today, and I think there's a couple later on as well as teams try to figure out bye weeks and navigate all the different injuries teams are starting to pick up. But let's dive right in, as usual, to the Big Bid Boys. And $20. Keith has paid $20 for Paris Campbell. Thing is, though, they've gone through a quarterback change there. It's just been announced that Matty Ice is getting benched, so it'll be interesting to see if Ellinger is going to come in there and throw the ball as much to Campbell. So there's an element of risk there. So for $20, that's a big crack of your budget gone. But I suppose Michael Gallup's not been playing particularly well, so perhaps a low risk in the player that he's lost, edging out Robin there with that $20 bid. Always good cover for bye weeks, and he has had two cracking scores in consecutive weeks. And then Brian at the Tomahawks for $20. However, $20 unchallenged, so you could definitely got him for cheaper there for Irv Smith at the Vikings. He did have a couple of better weeks just towards the bye week there, and he's coming back off that bye week nice and fresh. Brian will be hoping he can start hitting the similar sorts of scores as he had in the last 2 weeks there. Next up, a couple of bids in for Rachaad White. I believe Robin again outbidded there by Rob there for White. And White's not been getting a lot of action. He's not scoring a lot of points, but he did for the first time. He got pretty close to Leonard Fournette's output, although not a particularly great game for the Buccaneers. But they're starting to see White maybe just getting a bit more action. I think he was only 2 touches behind Leonard Fournette in that last game. So the hope is that he'll continue to grow as the season goes on. If you need cover for your bye weeks, perhaps he's going to have a bit of a smasher as the Bucs start to fight back, getting ready for those playoffs. We all know Tom Brady loves those playoffs, and I'm sure that they will be back. Keith then dropping big Matty Ice, totally understandable, picking up David Mills, so he's just basically replacing a backup quarterback for a backup quarterback, but at least this one is due to play, so that'll be a big benefit. $10 spent there, but that's $30 dropped already by Keith in our Big Bid Boys list. And then we got our little bitty boys. We got Isaiah McKenzie, I think just about to join his third team. He did a smashing job for me earlier in the season and actually helped me, I think, to that second game win when Davis was out injured. And Cole Kmet's just really not been consistent and just isn't doing a lot there. So possibly good cover there for Rob. However, I do know that the Bills seem to be finding wide receivers all over the place. And so he might have to share some targets with others in the team, and then that might of course affect his development. He might not get quite as many big games. I might be just reliant on whether or not he gets those catches in the end zone and get some TD points for you. Goodwin's looking really good. Great game for him at the Seattle Seahawks, and of course with injuries there in their wide receiver room, he's bound to, at least for the next game or two, pick up some more points. Metcalf out injured, but they've got a couple of other players in that wide receiver room carrying knocks. So Goodwin, after a good game, hoping to pick it up for the rest of the season, and not a lot of money spent there, so pretty low risk, and Downey will be pretty happy to get him, and of course Boone, who he's dropping out injured, so no risk there. And then Mikey at the Bruins scooping up the Colts. Nothing spectacular happening with that Colts defense or that Colts team in general, but they are just slightly outplaying the LA Chargers, and with bye weeks rampant and defenses off the board, why not go for one that's ranked a little bit higher than the one you've already got? And there was some interest there, a nice $5 bid there, low risk, and will surely carry you through a week or two. Then we got our cheap as chips, although there was some competition for these players at $5. We've got the 49ers defense. They've got some really big scores, but the last 2 weeks those numbers have dipped. Be interesting to see if those numbers pick up for Robin and the Claymores, in desperate need of a win after quite a few defeats in a row, and with sitting only 2 wins, if she lets her rivals get any further ahead of her, she might find that challenging to come back from. So she's hoping that the 49ers defense is going to come to her rescue a little bit this week. And Brian at the Tomahawks picking up Tyler Bass, a little bit jealous there. I had him up until his bye week. Pretty reliable kicker, but also the Bills give him a lot of opportunities to kick because they have a habit of scoring quite a lot of touchdowns. So good pick up there for Brian because kickers can win games. And then Downey scooping up Elijah Moore. He's expected back for week 8, but he's not exactly put up big scores so far. It'll be interesting to see how he plays coming back into that team, with probably more action going to the wide receivers after the big news that their young running back is going to be out for a considerable length of time. I feel like high ankle sprains seem to be rampant this year. And Sammy Watkins not really doing particularly much there at Green Bay, so really just trading out a wide receiver that you hope's on the up for one that you know is on the down. Then we've got our afterthoughts. Nobody went in for these players. Very, very low bids. Will Dissly coming up again, tight end. Had really reliable numbers at the start of the season. Still ranks inside the top 15. Tight end. Still ranks inside the top 15 tight ends. And yeah, big David Njoku out injured. So you've got to pick somebody up. A couple of dollars spent there. Low risk. Considered him myself, but I decided the Wildcats were going to go for Double J at New Orleans. He had a cracking game. He is a bit boom or bust. I'm just hoping that his next matchup, I'm getting the boom. Because, of course, he's got a slightly strange situation there in a tight end room that sort of has players doing all different sorts of jobs. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets used. And then we've got the Falcons defense, are ranked 23rd for quite a feisty team that's kind of a bit up and down. They're up against Carolina though, and it's going to be interesting because obviously they're starting to sell off parts. It's almost like they're done for the season, and they haven't been playing very well anyway. And their quarterback situation with the double injuries to their first 2 options, and now going to PJ. But what a game they put up at this weekend. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what team turns up against the Falcons. So a little bit of a risk there, but there wasn't a lot of defenses out there to grab as we saw from earlier and we're about to see in a minute. And then Downey, just dropping Tannehill, who's not had a great start to the season for the Titans. The Titans getting a little bit annoyed there, and I think we want to see a bit of a change away from Tannehill, hopefully at the end of the season for them. And so Downey has brought in Sam Ehlinger. Hope I'm saying his name right. I think it's Sam Ehlinger. And apparently he had a fantastic preseason, and they were raving about him quite highly. Ownership there has been calling for him to play for quite a few weeks. Already a bit sick of Matty Ice. But it took that one last disastrous game, I think, for the coaching staff to kind of cave and agree. It'd be interesting to see if he plays anything near where the owners think that he can play and the sort of ability that he showed in preseason. But preseason, it's not real games. You're not up against number 1 defense. It'll be interesting to see if he can make the sort of progress there. And then our final little also Rams here at the end is Telfy picking up a second defense, getting the Vikings back off their bye week, see if a fresh defense can put up some big points. It'll be interesting to see if he goes for them or the Falcons. As I said, interesting matchup there. And then Brian at the Tomahawks deciding to pick up the Panthers D, who are performing just slightly above the Giants. If you go from the overall fantasy points of view, not a lot in it really, but maybe just looking at the matchups and thinking which one's going to get you more points. And so that is what we have for our waiver wire look. As always, we've got our awards. We've got the Big Spender Awards for Keith at the Lagavulin Smokeheads after spending $30 on 2 players inside that Big Bid Boy list and saving up. We've got Mikey at the Bruins. I suppose when you're winning, you want to hang on to as much of that money to try and cover for your bye weeks. However, with bye weeks coming thick and fast, I don't know how long that will manage to stay there. Interesting as well with Greg coming just second, I think $2 behind Mikey. Again, when your teams are winning, you tend to spend a little bit less money. And this week's You Tried award goes to Robin, who put in 2 bids for players in the Big Bid Boys list. However, failed to get either of those. She did pick up someone later on, but I know how Robin feels when your team really isn't doing too well and you need to try and pick up those wins. You're scouring those waiver wires and you're putting bids in for as many players as possible, just trying to see what sticks and hoping that when they do come into your team, if you're lucky enough to get them, that you can pull off that win. And now that is it for Living on the Wire. There is a little song coming as promised that I'll just pop up on the end of this video. I'll just stick it on to the end. And as always, may the fantasy gods be kind. Well, Alan's finally gone and done won a game, but he'll still find a way to sit and complain about all of the points that he's left on his bench. But even though he's moaning, he's absolutely whooped Ross. For 30 points he showed up like a big boss. Now he's matched with Brian, can he win and start flying? Oh, will he win or